Hi, Doug. Welcome to Zombieland.
And we are back to talk about Dead Heat, the 1988 Treat Williams, Joe Piscopo buddy cop zombie movie. Matt, you suggested this movie to us. I'd never seen it before. I had never heard of it. Dan, I think you were in the same boat.
Never heard of it. Nope.
Yep. It was a complete
Unfortunately,
mystery to us.
that's usually the case with this one. It is very obscure, and that's why I knew it would be perfect for our crossover.
Mm.
It's also kind of a crossover itself. It's a action horror comedy, and tonally, that's a very hard thing to do right. And full disclosure, I absolutely love this movie. I have since the first time I saw it in 1988, and yeah, I adore this movie. So I'm curious to see what you guys think.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean you adore this movie so much that listeners out there, he is currently dressed as Treat Williams.
Roger
Yes.
Mortis.
Roger Mortis.
Watch the video version for the full effect.
Well, like him before he gets blown up, but yeah.
Yeah.
And with no hair.
So how did this movie come about? Because it's a New World Pictures movie, isn't it? It looks like a low budget affair.
That's correct. It's New World Pictures, which was a spin-off of Roger Corman's studio.
Oh, right.
And they were mostly known for doing, kind of lower budget, mid tier, not even mid tier, but like lower tier stuff like Vamp and this, and just a variety of other movies. They were a step above Canon Films, but they weren't quite in the, Warner Brothers or anything like that category. And the movie was written by Terry Black, who is the brother of Shane Black from Lethal Weapon fame and The Long Kiss Goodnight, Last Boy Scout, etc. And this is pretty much the only movie he ever wrote. Which is kind of odd. I guess that didn't really take off his career, but and directed by Mark Goldblatt, who is a legendary editor. He edited Terminator, Rambo 2, Commando, Predator 2, The Last Boy Scout, True Lies, Starship Troopers, Armageddon, Bad Boys 2. He's kind of action movie royalty as far as editors go. And he only did 2 movies himself as a director. He did this and the 1989 Dolph Lundgren Punisher film.
Oh, wow. Okay. I've not heard great things, to be honest.
It's not that bad. It's solid. It's solidly directed. It has problems story wise, and Dolph Lundgren's got very limited range, I guess. And he was still kind of mastering English at this point, but it's not that bad. Yeah. Also, Mark Goldblatt was the second unit director on RoboCop, which I feel like is what got him this gig.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, he certainly knows his way around an action movie.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at the list of movies that you just mentioned, he's worked with like big name directors, like James Cameron, Michael Bay, Joe Dante. These are massive budget movies, and this is not a massive budget.
It is not. This was a $5 million rough estimate budget, and I feel like they left every single bit of that money on the screen. I feel like they really maximized it with the effects and the makeup. But again, that's
incredible effects. Actually blown away by some of the scenes.
Right?
Yeah. Definitely. There are other aspects of it that, I mean, I alluded to the fact that it obviously does look like a low budget movie. I think you get that from the opening titles, because I was surprised that this was 1988, because the opening titles, with a white Helvetica font with a drop shadow over the top of a cityscape, and the film stock looks ropey as all hell, and some of the camera work is quite sort of handheld and janky, and it looks like it's this is take 2 of the 2 we could do before we had to move on. So some of it looks a little bit threadbare here and there.
It
But
does, and I feel like a lot of that comes from it being a virgin director, basically.
Sure.
But yeah, there's definitely a TV quality to it.
yeah,
I feel like.
Yeah, I mean, also like other aspects, the sound is not great. Like it sounds like the microphone is like way away from the actors in some scenes. Very
Yeah.
echoey. Some of the like what you see, Conrad. Some of the acting, I was like, is that the take they went with? Like
Yeah.
verging on Nicolas Cage type acting, like just sudden outbursts that just come out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, one of the opening, not the very opening scenes, but the scene when they're in the convertible and we're first introduced to Bigelow and Mortis, and Mortis is driving and Joe Piscopo is just kind of playing the bongos on the dashboard, and he's just kind of making monkey faces at Treat Williams and eating a hot dog or whatever it is. I feel like I could have shot and framed a better scene than that because it's literally like wait, are we rolling? Like what's going on here?
Yeah.
I feel like those were like, oh
Yeah.
shit, I didn't know you were actually recording this.
Yeah, I've got my mouth full of stuff from the craft service table. Yeah. So so it's a buddy cop movie. We are introduced to our two buddy cops as per usual. They are well, I think usually there's well, I don't know, I'm just thinking of Lethal Weapon. There's the straight arrow that's a month away from retirement, or there's a straight arrow and then there's one who's a little bit of either a rookie or somebody flies by the seat of their pants and just breaks all the rules to get the job done. But both of them seem to be pretty maverick. I think they're both getting in trouble all the time.
I found, like what you said, there's normally the straight arrow by the book, normally married or has a girlfriend, and then the other one is just womanizing. But they both seem to be womanizing, or I don't know. They seem to be the same character, but kind of dressed slightly differently.
Well, I feel like I feel like Bigelow is the unhousebroken one of the two, but they're both like single, no kids, no families, and just kind of flying by the seat of their pants, and they're both kind of mavericks and just they're the renegade kind of cops that are always in trouble, but one of them is like the wisecracker meathead, and then the other one is kind of like the professional. I at least look professional in my suit.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they're basically the same guy. Yeah. But
Yeah,
you do get a sense that they're friends. Like they seem like they would hang out, even though they have very different personality types.
Yeah, I mean, there definitely was a connection. Like they did seem like they were buddy cops. Like it was they sort of fulfilled the premise of a buddy cop movie. If one of them was black, it would have been even more of the buddy cop.
Yeah, absolutely.
I did kind of find it funny the character names in this movie are only character names you would see in a movie, like Roger Mortis, Doug Bigelow, Randy James, Dr. Ernest McNabb, Arthur P. Loudermilk. These aren't real names. These are movie names.
Well, I love the pun with Roger Mortis too, where it's like rigor mortis. Ah, I see what you did there.
Yeah, only in the 80s, I think.
Even as a 10-year-old watching this movie, I'm like, oh, his last name's Mortis. He's going to be the one that dies.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Did you think that maybe they took the Bigelow character just a little bit too far? I mean, there's the boorish womanizing stereotype, but I mean, some of the things that he said during this movie, I don't think it's just that they aged badly. I think they were pretty appalling at the time.
Tampons, hemorrhoid cream, stuffer crabs,
among others.
Hello.
Hi.
I do some research, right?
yeah, well,
Wow.
that was that kind of, and I'm not going to apologize for it, but it was especially during that time in the 80s, there was that kind of frat boy mentality where it's like, oh yeah, say some irreverent, like misogynistic stuff and it'll be funny, and he was very much, and he was, Joe Piscopo had got diagnosed with cancer a few years before. He had throat cancer, and he
Oh,
beat it.
wow.
But then he turned into an absolute like gym freak and started lifting weights and bulking and everything else. And you totally see that in this movie. I mean, every scene where he has his jacket off, he's, bowed up and flexing, and he's doing specific things where it's like, oh, hey, this is going to pop my tricep out. I'm just going to do this for no reason. Like nobody in the world has ever sat like that and they're on their desk. And I mean, he's almost bending his elbow like inward, and it's like, look at my tricep. But
I
and,
didn't
and
even
good for
notice
him.
that.
Oh yeah, it's a as a guy that lifts weights, like everything he's doing in that movie, it's like, like, oh, pardon me, look how big I am, and that looks like a skinny guy that all of a sudden woke up one day with muscles, and that's kind of how he's acting.
Right.
And,
I mean, I did watch it
and
with my wife, and she was just like scoffing at the screen every time he said anything. She was on the verge of walking out of the room every time he was he had his lines. Yeah, some of them are
yeah,
really disgusting. Even the last line that he has as they walk
yeah,
off into distance. It's like I would be
and
like
it's
I'd like to be reincarnated as the bike seat of a girl's bike seat. It's like, what?
yeah.
Who said that?
Well, and that's the horny 80s for you, where it's like, look how horny everybody is. Isn't that funny? And yeah, it was such an unnecessary line. And it's like, wait, you guys are basically walking into heaven, I think. And he's going to say something vile like that. It's almost like, do you want us to get kicked out? Yeah.
Yep, that's very true. Yep, there's a nice little slice of homophobia thrown in there as well when Roger, who during the course of the film dies and is regenerated. If you're not au fait with the storyline, we'll explain why in a moment. But he does die during the film and get resurrected as a zombie during the course of this buddy cop team's investigations, and his lips go very, very pale at one point. So he buys some lipstick to try on, and of course he gets shamed for it, and by his partner putting on sort of a stereotypical camp voice and telling him that it brings out the color in his eyes. And it's even brought back again later in the movie as a device to bring Joe Piscopo's character back from some sort of hypnotic trance or some sort of mind control. He's resurrected with the homophobic gag, and the fond memory of that homophobic gag they shared comes flooding back. So yeah,
That's the only part of that I like, is that they used a moment of joy between them, like a little funny moment. I just hate that that's what it was.
Yeah, it's a shame what it is, but I mean, they're a couple of guys. It's going to happen, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean,
Well,
like,
and
why that shade of lipstick though? I mean,
I know.
how is that going to work?
Yeah.
As an amateur, he really should have started with something lighter, I think.
Well, and I love after he puts it on and they show up at Randy James's house, she's like, what happened to you? And he's like, cut myself shaving. And he's literally got his lipstick all over his lips. And that's one of the funniest lines in the movie to me. And it's just kind of a throwaway.
Yeah.
Yeah. So those are our two main characters. How about the story of the film? So we're dealing with another great theme from the 80s, other than buddy cop movies, which is, evil rich corporations and capitalists will be super evil, and in this case they'll go so far, in Vincent Price's case, to create a machine that will ensure that they can live forever, and he will profit massively from it. So our buddy cops are having to investigate how zombies keep showing up and robbing jewelry stores. Now, I have to admit, I have watched the film twice very closely while taking notes. I really could not figure out what the plot of this movie was.
There's a lot of holes.
Yeah. Because
so...
because I mean, they're first brought into it because of these jewelry robberies where somebody is using zombies to rob jewelry stores, but that's not Vincent Price? Why would Vincent Price do? So I didn't understand what was happening there. And then was Vincent dead or not? And was he behind it or not? Or was it some mortician called McNabb? Yeah,
So,
I'm
having
confused.
seen this movie probably 100 times,
Yeah.
it's still confusing to me, but I think I can clarify a little bit. The jewelry robberies are Darren McGavin's character, who is the chief coroner. He's doing that kind of off the books without Vincent Price's knowledge. Him and the Asian man played by Key Luke, Mr. Thule, they are using the the thieves and the criminals and things like that, bringing them back to life so that they can go out and steal for them to make them rich. But Vincent Price's end game is, we've got this machine that does this. Screw all that robbing stuff. We're just going to get these really rich people to give us half their fortunes so that we can keep these old people alive. Because what is every rich person? What's the one thing they can't buy? Immortality. And that's his big sales pitch. So it's almost like there's two subplots where it's like there's two villains, and Darren McGavin's character is the kind of the bruiser villain, and then Vincent Price is the champagne villain.
Right.
Just to give it James Bond clarity.
I have a big question though. So when they're investigating, so we've got Roger and Randy James, and they're in the morgue. Not in the morgue. They're at the cemetery, and they're looking for clues. And then they find under the lamp, there's like blood.
Yeah, written in blood or whatever. Yeah.
So who wrote that?
I don't know. I think from what I can gather from what he explains, it's Vincent Price's character catches wind that McGavin is doing all this. And just in case he turns on him, he goes to his fake mausoleum with his fake dead body in there and leaves a numbers to letters phone code on that map. And it looks like it's written in blood, so that somebody will have a clue that that's who did him in. It's really thin. But
yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, it's really thin. It doesn't work for me, but that's what I've gathered from that. I think that's what was the idea in the script, but it's really really loose.
It doesn't really make sense in the sort of overall story arc, because you find out that Loudermilk is part of the big plot, so that makes no sense. But when you don't know that and the twist isn't revealed, then you think, oh, he's still dead. This was his last message.
They keep it a little ambiguous too, where you don't know if he's died and then they've used the machine on him to bring him back, or if they just pretended that he was sick and then somebody else, they put a body in there. They don't really explain it.
The premise of the film, buddy cop, zombies. But what's interesting about this movie with Roger's character is he is a zombie, but he's still very able-bodied. He's thinking clearly, but he's just decomposing, which you don't often see in movies. It's quite a interesting sort of existential theme about like what is he now, like and I've only seen it in a few other movies. What was your take on that? Like, that was, for me, that was very interesting for a character.
I think it's one of the most compelling parts of the story is not, like you said, like he's deteriorating and he's running out of time, and he freaks out about it in the library at one point. And my favorite line, non-comedic line from Joe Piscopo in this movie is when he kind of chases after him and calms him down and says, nobody has all the time they need, Roger, nobody. And it's such just a really deep emotional line, and it's true, but it's nobody has all the time that they need to live. And he's got this truncated amount where it's like, I've only got 6 hours left. I can't do this. And it's a really beautiful little scene, even though it's clunkily shot because he runs like 25 feet and then he's like, oh, wait. And he's all out of breath. And he's like, that was a hell of a chase. It's like, no, it wasn't. You ran 25 feet. Mr. I'm in
really
shape.
slowly as well.
Yeah, they're like they're just kind of
yeah,
like listing through.
mime running. That's one of my notes, slowest foot chase ever. Tom Cruise would be ashamed. But yeah, it is an interesting aspect of the characterization of Roger, and then the themes in the film is this idea of you've got somebody investigating a crime where they only have a limited time to live. It reminds me of DOA, which originally came out in 1950, which is a film noir where a character is poisoned. You can probably watch it on YouTube if you're interested, because they fouled up the copyright registration, so it fell into public domain.
Wow.
And a remake of it starring Dennis Quaid and Meg Ryan, who I think were a hot couple at this point because they'd already been in a space together in '87. But a remake came out in '88.
Oh wow, the same.
That's
year.
Actually the original is the movie. Yeah. The original is the movie that's playing when he goes back to Randy James's apartment. Yeah,
that's right. Wow. Yeah, it's on the screen. The revelation that he's been murdered by somebody because he's been poisoned. He only has so much time to figure out who did it and get his revenge, and then he'll die. And it's it's an interesting premise. It's used in an interesting way here, particularly with Treat Williams' character Roger Mortis, because he has his various stages of grief during the movie. He doesn't have a huge amount of time for it, but it's interesting how he changes as a character, because I think he's supposed to be the straight arrow by the numbers kind of guy, who starts off dressed very smartly, and then as the film progresses, he becomes more and more disheveled and looks more sort of punky, but also has much more of a devil may care, screw it, let's just shoot them all kind of attitude. I mean, it's not a massive arc, but it is somewhat of an arc, which is quite fun to watch.
Well, and I think you've hit it right on the head too, and I think that kind of is a parallel between him kind of loosening up the less time that he has and the closer to the end that he gets. Sort of like when elderly people kind of get that, I don't give a shit, I'm just going to say whatever I want to, and I'm going to eat pudding every day, and like this is what I want to do, and I'm old enough to where I don't give a shit anymore. And that's he kind of, it takes only having a couple hours left to live for him to start living. And like when he's in that ambulance going down the hill and he's like, oh yeah, and he's just, like, I mean, he's like, it's like he's on a roller coaster, and it's like, well, he's about to crash and explode, but it's like he's enjoying it.
He's living his best death.
Yeah, he's living his best death.
I mean, talking about death, I was really surprised when characters were killed off in this movie. Like, Wow. What was your take on that?
I was shocked. I mean, at the end of is it the start of the third act or the end of the second? I'm not quite sure. But all of a sudden, we just lose everybody.
Yeah.
Spoilers.
Everybody dies wholesale.
Yeah. I mean, shock. The really big shock for me, I mean, there's the Randy James character just, again, makes no sense, because I could never figure out, does this resurrection machine only work for 12 hours, or does it work in perpetuity, or does it work for a short period of time? Because Randy James is this character that's worked there for quite some time, rescued from a morgue, experimented on, employed as a PR person, and then falls apart in a shocking scene that I'm sure we'll talk about in the Mooblies. I know I will anyway. But the most shocking one to me was what happened to Bigelow's character, because you have a poignant scene after they've had that sort of library scene, and they part ways to go to sort of pursue two different leads. And you have this poignant moment of Bigelow looking out at his partner as he pulls away, and you think, oh, that's quite touching. He's actually thinking about the fact that he's concerned about him, or he's aware that he's going to lose him and he's going to miss him. It's surprisingly poignant for this movie in terms of the general tone of it. But then you realize later on that actually it's because it's his sort of final shot, or at least you think it is, because the next time you see him, he's upside down in a fish tank, which was a complete shock because you couldn't even recognize him, and they had to loop a line on the soundtrack that said, "It's
Doug.
It's Doug."
Yeah, I didn't recognize him. Yeah.
As a kid, I remember watching that going, is it though?
Yeah.
It looks like Frankenstein.
Yeah, it does not look like him. I mean, he's got a mullet, but other than that, it's pretty difficult to tell.
Yeah.
But he's upside down and he's a dummy. I mean, it's not going to be great, is it?
Yeah. Also, Roger doesn't seem hugely affected by it.
No.
And then it's followed immediately by Randy James's death. And then you've got the ambulance. It's just like a series of things happening in quick
Well, the thing that gets me about her death too, and like what Conrad was saying, is like, how long has she been alive? Like, I heard at the beginning of the movie that they can't keep popping them in and like it's a microwave and just heating them up. So how does that work? Like, why does she have a job if she's basically one of these zombies? And I haven't confirmed this, but my idea of it is that she's kind of like the test for them to prolong it, because at the end, Vincent Price is selling it as, we've perfected this one. This model is, there's no issues. Like, we're going to reactivate them and they're not going to just waste away. So I think that she was probably the prototype for that.
Yeah.
But then you would think, well, she should probably know that. And then why wouldn't she be doing everything she can to get back there and get recharged, unless she just wants to die and melt away?
Yeah.
So it doesn't make any sense. And I also don't buy the little burgeoning romance between her and Mortis. She's known him for less than a day, and it doesn't feel right. It's like, and she's also got kind of a femme fatale. I feel like she watched that DOA from 1950, and she's like, oh, imagine what you could do with a search warrant. And she's just kind of trying to be a snarky bitch, and it just doesn't work that she would give a shit about either one of those guys.
Yeah,
No.
I mean, I didn't really get the whole romance thing. I don't know. I don't think they really pushed it too badly. I did find her character was a little like just poorly written. She didn't really do a lot. She was often just kind of standing around with her arms like this. And often if they wanted a change in the plot, she would just be like, "Oh yeah, I lied. This actually happened." And then later on, "Oh no, I lied again. No, this actually."
Yep.
Who wrote this?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you have Rebecca, the another mortician. No, forensics scientist. No, she's a coroner. That's right. Sorry, she's a coroner.
She's an assistant coroner who is an expert in forensic pathology.
That's the one. Yes. And I think, picking up on it, I think she's had a relationship with Roger Mortis in the past, but they've split up. And so I think they're sort of hinting at them still having feelings for each other. Certainly, it still seems to be quite raw. And then, at the end of the movie, she just shows up on a stretcher in an ambulance. She's been killed. Just comes out of nowhere. That character's dead too. So they just lay waste to the entire cast so that it's basically just Roger Mortis versus Vincent Price for the finale, which I was shocked
I feel
by.
Like I think they had to get rid of her because otherwise I feel like they needed a reason for him to just say, you know what, I don't care anymore. Like, YOLO. Like, that's it. If she's dead now, I don't got anybody. Let's ride an ambulance down a hill and to a fireball. But he kind of used that as motivation too, where it's like, oh, I gotta get these guys, even more so than avenging himself.
Yeah.
Sure.
But
I think you're right. He had nothing left to live for. Well, I mean, one little note, I did think it was another little cliche that when Rebecca and Randy meet each other, they instantly hate each other. You cannot put two women in the same room as Treat Williams without some sort of cat fight just breaking out instantly.
I mean,
I love that. She's like, you work here?
I did like Doug's line though. After that, it's like it's a bit chilly in here. It's a bit
Chillier than
chilly.
normal in here.
Yeah.
I think Treat Williams is, no pun intended, just a treat in this film because he is having so much fun, and I love watching his character in this movie. And how you said how he's kind of stuffed shirt at the beginning, and then he just turns into this kind of like fun goofball at the end, and but he's still driven. So it's weird. It's a weird stew.
Mm.
Mm, mm.
Yeah, I'm fond of him from the only other film I've seen with him in, I think, is Deep Rising, which I
He's
really
got that same
enjoy.
energy. He's got the same energy in both films, I feel like.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, so I only know him as this character, pretty much.
He's also the villain in the 1996 Phantom movie with Billy Zane.
Ah, not one I've
And
seen.
he's very over the top in that movie.
Right.
Yeah.
Talking about another actor in this movie, has a very, very, very small role. Robert Picardo is in
Yes.
this movie.
Yes. Yes, he is.
Bless him. He shows up very early on with a splendid moustache as the poor policeman who's saddled with this renegade cop duo turning up and ruining his gig, and stealing his car and trashing it. Yeah, so he's the angry by the books guy from The Office who never achieves results, but yeah, it seems to be the butt of their jokes.
He's the 80s action movie Wimpy Lieutenant.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
He's very good, though. He is very funny in a very, very short cameo appearance.
I was just going to mention Vincent Price, of course, is in this movie. He's, very renowned for being in a lot of genre films. I really don't know him that well. I have to say I've only seen him in House on Haunted Hill, the original, and the abominable Dr. Phibes. He was in the original The Fly. I didn't realize. Do you guys know Vincent Price very well?
Oh yes. Yeah, I'm a huge Vincent Price fan. He had a very long and interesting career, and I first learned of Vincent Price. He did the voiceover in Thriller.
Yeah.
At the end of Thriller, where he's like, the hounds of hell, and he does the whole soliloquy at the end of that. That's where I first heard of him. Then I'm like, who's this guy? And then, growing up watching horror movies and things, it was like, oh, he was in the original Fly and Dr. Caligari, I think, and just a lot of. He also did westerns, and he had a very interesting, like, weird career. And I just remember his elocution being so perfect, just the way he talked and the way he just. It's like watching an artist or like watching a dancer dance. When he talks, it's just the way he hits some of his syllables and things, and just it's really elegant, and I've always just really enjoyed that. He also did a ton. I don't know if this was. I doubt that it was a thing in the UK or in Australia or New Zealand, but he did a lot of commercials in his later years. Wow. In the 70s and 80s. He was the guy for your commercials, and if you ever want to find out about Vincent Price doing commercials, go on YouTube. And he sold everything. And when this movie came out, he was in 1985. He was selling Tilex bathroom spray, board games. He was the spokesperson for the Dairy Council, selling cheese on commercials. Wow. Like, how do you know if your yogurt is real? Look for the seal. And he's like doing all that kind of stuff. And he was selling Time Life books about witches and wizards. He was doing local commercials for sub sandwich shops. Okay. He was like, I heard from my cousin. It brought me this sub. And he's like, I mean, he's doing this whole thing. There's one where he's doing one for a bank. It was like Citibank or something like that for ATM cards when those were brand new. And his wife's talking about the bank and all the rewards and the miles they get. And he's over in the corner, like watching his bug zapper killing flies. And he's like, marvelous. And it's like, but he was
Oh, it
quite
pays
the
well. Advertising definitely pays well. So
yeah, he was getting that money, you know.
Yes, I only know him, from the latter stage of his career. So it's sort of like Peter Cushing and other people, Christopher Lee from that era. They've been massive in horror movies from the Gothic period of the 40s, 50s, and the 60s, and then the people who grew up watching those movies would have them cameo in their movies. So I know Vincent from Edward Scissorhands, for example, where he shows up as Edward's creator, and yeah, definitely Michael Jackson's Thriller. But he was kind of playing off his horror movie credentials at that point and cackling in toothpaste commercials or whatever. So
yeah,
why not? Why not?
yeah. Yeah, he was great. He was also in the as far as sci-fi, he was in the original Last Man on Earth, which is what I Am Legend, the story that's based on. He was in the original film version of that, and it's pretty good.
Yeah.
Wow.
I really enjoy that one. I've got a lot to say about Darren McGavin in this movie. But he feels like he's in a completely different movie and isn't really aware of what's going on in this movie, and he just kind of pops in like a gargoyle and is like, "Hey, what's going on here? What? I thought you were dead. Oh, you're alive. Cool. What's going on?" But he's harnessing the energy from A Christmas Story, where he was the old man, the dad, and it's that character to me as a kind of halftime villain. And he's got kind of a Mr. Magoo thing going on where he's just kind of, whoa, what's this all about? I'm brushing my toupee. What do you want? Oh, I killed you. And it's so manic and all over the place. And it's almost like he's watching the movie with us and he's confused. And then all of a sudden he's in the movie and he's like, oh, all right. Well, I guess I'm the bad guy then. Ha ha. And it's wild. But
yes,
it's still entertaining. It's fun to watch, but it's a mess every time he's on screen.
Yeah. Even his demise is just like, what?
Like what? Yeah. Well, he shoots himself like he thinks that's going to be the end, and it's like, you're in a movie where they resurrect people. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah. No, I did enjoy the scene where he was brushing his own toupee as he was unmasked as the villain. But yeah, it was perfect for the tone of the movie. And I think all of the scenes we've seen him in before it, where he's playing such an idiot, I think is just to make sure that it's a red herring for the audience, that they just do not suspect that this is the guy behind it all, even though he actually isn't. It's Vincent Price. I don't know. There are so many twists.
Well, he's behind what he's doing,
which
is what Mortis is after. But yeah, it's a concurrent bad guy thing he's got going on.
Yeah.
But and Mortis even says at one point as he's driving away, he's like, "I love that guy," and it's like, no, you don't. You can't stand that guy. Like, why are you saying that? It's like he's doing that so that you don't think that guy's, a villain or whatever. Very poorly written. But.
Yeah. I love that his license plate is Body Doc, which is the clue that's on the lampshade that you mentioned, Dan. I was just trying to imagine what other kind of doc is there than a body doc. I suppose there's a head doctor.
Animal doc?
I mean, it's like body, like there's like a feet doctor. There's a
yeah, but bodies generally tend to be the focus of the medical profession.
Specify the body part,
I guess. Next time I hear somebody say, "I'm going to the eye doctor."
Yep. So we haven't talked about the music. This is by Ernest Troost, who is not a composer that I have come across very often. The only other film that I know of that I've seen that he scored was Tremors. And I believe he was a last-minute replacement on that for somebody else. So actually that film contains parts of two different scores. This is another one where I was surprised at how elaborate it was. It sounds like there's a full orchestra blaring away there. It feels, again, very early 80s television to me. I was shocked again that this is 1988 because it's very active, very florid. there's a lot of those sort of TV touches where the woodwinds come in during the middle of a dialogue scene when they're saying something particularly poignant. And yeah, I don't know. It shocked me, actually. I was not expecting a score like this in 1988, when things seem to be shifting more towards rock and synthesizers, particularly for this type of movie.
I agree. I feel like they were really going. The score to this never resonates in my head. I had to watch this. I watched it right before we're recording right now, just to listen to the music, because it makes no impact on me. I feel like it's frenetic and it's kind of all over the place, but and they really wanted to hammer home the spooky. This part's spooky, and it has a very, like you said, like a early 80s, late 70s spooky vibe to it. Almost like a made-for-TV vampire movie or something. And I feel like that's somebody gave him that direction and was like, "Here, we're going to make a spooky movie. Write us something." And much like Goldblatt directing and Piscopo doing his thing in this, I feel like this is probably Ernest Troost at the top of the mountain as for his abilities. And that's probably why we haven't seen him do a lot of other things.
Yeah,
but,
maybe. What did you make of it, Dan?
Yeah, I kind of liked the score. Just the fact that it wasn't sort of cheesy synth stuff. Like there was a very small part of the movie that had cheesy synth. It was during the big shootout scene at the start, and it had your typical cop movie music.
Yeah,
You must have just told just rip off something from a cop movie. But most of it, yeah, it was very orchestral. It was very, to me, it was very like almost like 40s, 50s, like Hitchcockian thriller type music, like very stirring strings and like horns and woodwind and stuff. Which I mean, I don't know. I really like. It's almost like very theatrical. Didn't really suit the tone of the movie, which was mostly comedy and mostly goofy. But I guess they were pushing for the horror sonic palette. But yeah, I didn't mind it. I was impressed by it. Yeah, I've only seen his other movie, Tremors. He also scored Sweet Revenge in 1987 and Munchies in 1987, another
Wow.
Gremlins rip-off movie. Small creature that kills everyone, I guess. And he's done a ton of TV movies. A ton. So it makes sense what you said, Conrad, that it sounds like a TV movie, because that's his bread and butter, I think.
Yeah.
That's one of my notes is he's done lots of TV. Well, and there's kind of a gothic quality to some of the score in this movie too, which like that's what I meant by the spooky. And I feel like some of it works, but some of it's just really kind of and it's just kind of like whimsical, like inquisitive. Like I don't know, it's a little weird.
Yeah.
You mentioned Dan. You mentioned the shootout. And there's something I want to point out about that. There's two things I want to point out about that shootout. There was, again, you guys being out of the United States, you probably wouldn't know about this event, but there was a real life shootout, and it's one of the worst in U.S. history, called the North Hollywood Shootout, that happened in 1997.
Oh, wow.
And it very closely mirrored the shootout in this film, which was 9 years before. But it's two guys that they were robbing banks, and they robbed a couple of armored cars before this. But they robbed a Bank of America, and they had, I think, 3 fully automatic weapons that they had tinkered with. And they had thousands of rounds of ammunition, and they fashioned body armor onto themselves. And I mean, you can find all this online and all of the details about it, but there was almost 2,000 rounds fired by both them and the police. 12 officers. I can't remember the exact stats, but I think 12 officers got killed or got injured and 8 civilians. And it went on for like 44 minutes. and they were shooting these guys and they wouldn't go down because the armor that they had fashioned was so powerful. So it's a very eerie parallel to the shootout at the beginning of this movie.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
The other thing I want to point out.
I was going to point out that it's the namesake of your podcast, Endless Bullets. It does seem to go on for a long time without anyone reloading.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, lots of bullets fired, and I feel like it's kind of prescient too, where they're like, "Why aren't these guys dead yet? We've shot them like 50 times each," and I'm sure that's what the cops were saying in 1997, where it's like, "We keep shooting these guys, and they won't die." But the other thing I was going to point out about that is that one of the zombie gunmen that's in that scene is stuntman Peter Kent. Do either of you know who Peter Kent is?
No.
He is Arnold Schwarzenegger's stunt double. So he has done all of the really famous, like the Terminator 2 jumping the motorcycle scene. That was Peter Kent.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, from I think 85 or 80, 84, 85, all the way through his career, he's been his stuntman.
That's right, because it's one of those cases like Vic Armstrong for Harrison Ford, where, for a long lens, the resemblance is close enough that you can get away with showing his face quite a bit, I think.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep, that's him.
Yeah, wow.
A little tidbit there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like Mark Goldblatt was really pulling from all of his contacts and all the movies that he's worked on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why not?
Yep.
Well, it's time for random trivia, and because we have a crossover co-host today, Matt, what fabulous bit of trivia did you find for us in your resurrection chamber today?
Well, I have the 4K of this that just came out from Vinegar Syndrome, and there's a lot of special features on it. So I was watching the interview with Mark Goldblatt, and towards the end of his interview, he mentioned that I guess for whatever reason, they had Vincent Price cast for Loudermilk, and they had him on set, and they wanted to shoot him first, I guess to get him out of the way or whatever, because it was such a small role. And then I guess the budget or something like that, they had some kind of budget crisis where they're like, we've spent all of our money, we can't afford him. So we can't afford to pay him. So, and they had to kind of break the news to him, and they said, well, we'll have to just roll with, somebody cheaper or whatever. And he was already in costume and makeup, and he said something to the effect of, well, the show must go on, this is for the art, so let's do it. And all of these nice people are here, and they've put in the work, and so he did that role for free.
Wow.
And yeah, which I feel like that's just, it speaks to what a sweetheart that guy was, and just how awesome and privileged we were to have him.
Yes. Wow, that's amazing.
That is incredible. I mean, it's Vincent Price for free.
Yeah.
I know.
Well, he was getting all that commercial money at this time. So,
well, this is
this was probably just a drop in the bucket. It's like, I'm doing this for scale,
Oh, bless him. And that's our trivia.
Yes. Okay, it's everyone's favorite part of the podcast, the Moobly Awards. It's where we present our favorite upside down in a fish tank parts of the film in a number of second time resurrecting exploding categories.
Wow. So
favorite quote?
Favorite quote. I think we're all going to be fighting over the same one.
Probably.
But Matt, you go first, because if it is what I think it is, I think you might be able to do a good impression of it too.
I've got a bunch of favorite quotes in this. I feel like everybody's favorite is going to be when Randy James, when they're in the Chinese barbecue after the fact, and Randy James looks at Roger Mortis and says, "Oh, your finger, you're hurt," and he cocks his pistol and he's like, "Lady, I'm fucking dead."
That is a great quote.
Yeah, I'd say that's my favorite.
Okay, yeah. Well, mine was, and what I was thinking everyone would be stampeding towards is Vincent Price's great sales pitch where he says, and I can't do an impersonation, so I won't try. Let's face it, poor people are supposed to die, but the same rule doesn't apply to us. We're rich. God wants us to live forever, and even if he doesn't, we can always buy him out.
I love that little giggle he gives at the end of that too. It just punctuates it so nicely.
We can always buy him off.
Well, that's the thing. If he did this for free when, he showed up for work and they've had to break the news to him that the budget isn't there to pay for him, and he doesn't phone it in. This guy still delivers that with such panache. It's a credit.
Well, he's so
to him,
smooth too. Just the way he might have done that in one take, because he
yeah.
was just so fluid in that scene where he's walking around the room and he's got his hand in his pocket and he's kind of pointing at this guy and that lady, and I mean he was owning it.
Oh yeah, I'd buy it from him, definitely.
Yeah, I was like, sign me up, I'll buy it.
Yeah.
Give me some of that cheese and the bathroom cleaner while you're at it.
Yeah. How about you, Dan?
I mean, there are an incredible amount of one-liners in this movie. Like, they really pulled out all the stops for those classic cop one-liners. But I do like it when Doug is trying to console like Roger about his whole predicament, and he says, "Let's just go find those suckers and trash their ass." And then Roger like corrects him, "It's asses." It's like, what? And then it comes back at the end where the opposite, they say the opposite lines, and it's great.
Hey, we really trashed our ass, didn't we?
That's asses, Roger.
Yeah.
It's an endearing little line, because it's almost like they're nodding to the audience saying like, look, this he's a meathead, and maybe he's not that smart. So, and I love that when he says it's asses, Doug, it's plural. And then he literally, right after he says it's plural, Doug looks at him and goes, plural? Like he's teaching a dog how to fetch or something. He's like, plural?
Yeah, it's quite sweet.
Yeah.
I mean, I've written down a ton of honorable mentions.
Sure.
Right from the get-go, the old lady in the jewelry store when she's perusing jewelry, coming out with, "I was looking for something a bit more suspenseful." Can jewelry be suspenseful? What the hell is she talking about? But yeah.
Oh, those old ladies in Beverly Hills,
Yeah. Doug's line to the zombies after they've ran the car into them and exploded them with grenades and goodness knows what else, and he says, "You have the right to remain disgusting."
I have an honorable mention too, is when they're being attacked by the Chinese barbecue, and when the pig jumps on him and he's like, "Okay, that's it. I'm a vegetarian."
Yeah, you can understand why. Even Rebecca got a zinger in there when McNabb is criticizing her diagnosis or her report on this dead body. She comes back with, "I never forget a body, doctor."
Yeah.
Well, I suppose in that profession, maybe you wouldn't.
Well, I feel like that's the whole body doc thing, where it's like, I never forget a body, doctor.
Yeah.
Foreshadowing.
Yes, I hadn't even figured that. That's very clever. Did you have any honorable mentions, Dan?
I think there's one where Rebecca's trying to explain to Roger about what's going to happen to him, and she says, "You haven't heard the worst of it," and he just replies, "I'm dead, Rebecca. How much worse can it get?"
Yeah. I've got another Doug one written down, which is just typical meathead, which is where they go to the Dante laboratory, which I think is a nod to the director, but it's also, a little bit on the nose, like in Jurassic World 3, where they have a company called BioSyn, and surprise, surprise, they're evil. But anyway, they get to the reception in the Dante Pharmaceuticals, and the guy behind, I guess he's a zombie. He does not look great. And he's reading a Penthouse magazine just on the front desk in front of everyone and not paying any attention. And Doug Doug takes the magazine away from him and says,
Sorry to interrupt your erection, pal, but we'd like to speak with the management of this facility.
Well, it was the 80s, and that's how horny every guy was. It was like
yeah,
you couldn't hold back. You had to have porn at work.
yep,
Yeah.
in the workplace. Yeah. Well, they're even doing that in the House of Commons here now, so...
Oh yes,
There we
that's
go.
right.
Yeah, one of our
He was looking
MPs is
at
in
tractors,
trouble.
wasn't he?
Yeah, he
Tractors.
said he was searching for tractors on Google and ended up on some porn site, but then continued watching it and bookmarked it for later.
Well, I always end up with tractors when I'm looking for porn, so.
I don't want to know your porn search terms, man.
I mean, maybe we believe him.
Okay. So, hair or costume?
They're gonna be the same.
Do you think so?
I'll let you guys go first on this one.
Go for it, Dan.
I mean, obviously, I'm gonna pick Roger's change of clothes from Randy's wardrobe, which Matt has kindly displayed.
Modeling for us now, yeah.
Video. Yeah, the blue blazer, the Hawaiian shirt, and the grey slacks. It's just, I mean, pretty 80s right there.
Oh yeah.
Very Magnum PR.
A lot of Miami Vice influence there, I think.
Yes.
Oh, that jacket, it's the sleeves are just waiting to be rolled up, I think.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yep, indeed.
Yep, I had the same thing.
I mean, it's so striking. You can't go past it.
Well, my question is, does makeup include effects makeup or just makeup?
Well, I mean, usually we save effects for favorite special effect. So,
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to go against the grain here, and I'm going to say the best hair is on the Caucasian ambulance driver that comes up when they're trying to put Roger and his body bag into the ambulance, and he like unzips it and he like rises out of it. And there's the black ambulance driver, and then there's the white guy with the blonde hair who has hair like a 5-year-old boy.
Right.
He looks like a Ken doll. And I'm like watching it, and I was like, wait a minute. And I was like, is that his? It looks like a helmet. Like, what's going on with his hair?
I need to rewatch.
So yeah,
yeah, I need
that's
to
my
rewatch
favorite
that
hair
too.
in the movie.
Wow, I wonder if he has all of it now.
I had hair like that until I was about 9 years old. So you never know.
You never know. Okay, most 80s. I'll make a bid for the most 80s thing in this, I think, is Randy James's apartment, which has red and black furniture, a zebra print sofa, and I think behind her at one point I saw a pink and turquoise neon abstract art installation. I just thought, my God, this is the most 80s room I have ever seen.
Yep.
It's the kind of thing they would do now when they're trying to do like Stranger Things and resurrect the 80s. And you think, oh, God, they're really laying it on thick. Nobody had. And then I watched this movie and went, oh. Yeah, they really did.
Yeah. I was torn between her apartment and the jewelry store at the beginning, which has the Flexstone painted gray walls and the the Art Nouveau pictures on the walls and kind of that faux Warhol thing going on.
Mm-hmm.
A little bit of Art Deco. It was very 80s, and not only that, but the way that the ladies in there were dressed with the sweater dresses with the belt and the and like the chandelier necklaces or whatever they were wearing.
Yes, obviously suspenseful though, clearly.
Something suspenseful.
80s for me. I mean, Roger's change of clothes, and also just the premise of the buddy cop movie, very 80s.
Oh gosh, yeah. if you have a list of buddy cop movies there, it could go on for quite some time.
There was a lot of, now that I think about it, some of the fashion choices in this for some of the zombies. There was two that showed up at the end, and one of them was wearing like this Japanese motif, where he had like the beret on, and he had like a white leather jacket that had like a Japanese rising sun emblem on it, and he almost looked like a break dancer.
Yeah.
I thought he almost looked like he was from Michael Jackson's Thriller or something.
Yeah, he looked like he was in the Beat It video where they were like knife fighting or whatever.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah. And I couldn't tell if he had eyes or not because it looked like he had like his eyes were like sewn shut or something.
Oh right, yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Favorite scene?
I have two, and I'm going to let you guys go first, just in case what this scene isn't one of yours. Then I'll make it mine.
Okay, go for it, Dan.
I mean, I've got two as well. They're also my favorite special effects scenes as well. The Chinatown restaurant scene.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean,
yes, that's mine.
I've never seen anything like it. I mean, how did they come up with that? That's incredible. Everything in the restaurant comes to life. All the food. And
I think
terrifying.
well, that scene is a special effects makeup artist's dream. I mean, just to be able to just go into something and just have an empty palette and be like, what can we do? And I think it's so creative and just a gorgeous scene, and it's hilarious.
It is serious and terrifying, and then the sort of the pinnacle of the scene with the whole cow carcass busting through the door. It's just like, wow. That's it. That's the best thing I've ever seen. That's amazing.
It's next level, isn't it? Because you get sort of duck heads and pig carcasses and yeah, various small pieces, but then the whole cow comes through from the freezer, and all because Mr. Thule has decided to reanimate the contents of the whole shop using his reanimation machine, which is hidden in a lampshade, which it just comes out of nowhere. This scene, you don't know who this guy is, why they're investigating him, what's going on, and all of a sudden you get like a 15-minute special effects extravaganza from nowhere with our buddy cops fighting off bits of dead animal that have been reanimated. And it's amazing because as cheesy as some of the effects are, they're all pretty impressive. I mean, certainly that cow carcass is, I mean, it's a freestanding thing waddling without hooves across the floor and then enveloping them. I
that was a man.
Is it a suit? It's amazing.
That's a guy inside that manipulating it. Yeah.
Wow. Really?
Yeah.
That's incredible.
It's amazing.
Yeah, Steve Johnson was the makeup effects artist on this, and he's done a ton of stuff. He's kind of a legend, and he did Blade 2, he did Species, just a lot of movies in the 90s, early 2000s, and I think he just went to town in this.
Yeah.
My favorite scene in that scene, my favorite part of that scene, I should say, is when the cow liver like rolls down the thing and jumps onto Roger's face, and it's like sticks to his face, and there's this. It makes me laugh every time. I was howling when he's like trying to pull it off his face, and you can hear him muffled say, "What the fuck is this?"
But it's really well done because the liver is sort of articulated because he peels it off at one point and it curls back on. Yeah. It's really well done. I have that as my funniest scene actually because that was the time when I laughed the loudest watching the movie. And partly it's because it reminded me of a scene with Leslie Nielsen in one of the Naked Gun movies. I forget which one it is, where he's attacked by a towel. Somebody throws a towel at him in a bathroom, and he's just fighting with it for sort of 15 minutes. It's just ridiculous. But I think that must have come after this. I'm not sure.
That was the same year, actually.
It was.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. I wonder if there was a little bit of stealing going on. Who knows? Steve Johnson got the job on The Abyss, which we covered last year as our Iconicon crossover with the Dreamland team. He got, because usually James Cameron would go to Stan Winston, but Stan Winston was busy with his own project. I think he was working on Pumpkinhead. They went with Steve Johnson on the strength of this movie. Cameron saw this movie and thought,
Really?
okay, this is the man for the job. Yeah. There you go.
I can't say that he was wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's, I was going to say, there's a funny line that Piscopo has too when the big bull things comes out, and he's like, "How do we fight this thing?" He's like, "Why don't we slather it in A1 sauce?"
Yeah. It's a great scene in and of itself. Even if you don't want to watch the whole movie, watch that scene.
Yeah. Well, I feel like that's the Doug Bigelow. That's the best Doug Bigelow that we get, is when he's throwing out lines like that. But unfortunately we have to put up with him being like a misogynist for the rest of the movie to kind of make that pay off.
Yeah, it's a shame. So other favorite scenes?
What was the other favorite scene that you mentioned, Matt?
The scene at the end when Mortis is raiding the laboratory and he has the point blank shootout with the undead guard that also has a submachine gun. And they are just, I mean, I've never seen anything like it in any movie, where they are just pumping each other, and they must have like, I mean, a metal plate with just tons of squibs on the torsos, and they're just popping. And that's really Treat Williams. That's not a stunt man, because you can see him in the makeup and everything, and they're just and just, I mean, unloading into each other. And that scene even extends past what we see in the film. They shot it for almost like a minute of them just unloading into each other, and then they actually had to cut it to get their R rating.
Oh wow!
Because of the violence. And I just love that scene because it's just, and they just, they can't kill each other. And then when he just finally gets fed up and he takes the grenade and throws it in there, I love that scene.
Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely another case of endless bullets, that's for sure.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Endless squibs.
It kind of got to a point where it's like, why are they even shooting each other? What are they achieving here? Like, how do they kill a zombie? They just have to throw grenades at them. That's it. Basically,
you have to blow it up or burn it or, whatever. Like you bullets, they're not making the same thing because they're not bleeding out. So it's like, it's almost like a pissing match that they were having. It's almost like, oh, yeah, I'm going to do this. It was almost like a letting out frustration.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't really dived into the psychology of that scene, but I love how just tactile it is, and just, it's like you can almost feel those bullets hitting when you watch it.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. For cliche, we're going to go with a regular feature from Matt's podcast. Take it away, Matt.
All right. Well, this is the point in my podcast where typically it's at the end of the podcast, we do what's called bullet points. And these are 5 tropes or cliches that I pick out of the movie, and we basically just kind of use them as discussion points. Bullet point number 1, the overly angry, agitated police captain.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Gotta have that. At least the commissioner wasn't chewing his ass or something, because that's usually what happens.
Well, at least he doesn't say your butt's writing checks, or you're writing checks your butt can't cash. But he does have some he delivers that so intensely that he's shaking. And that actor, his name's Mel Stewart, and he was in a lot of things in the 70s, early 80s. But he played a section chief on a TV show called Scarecrow and Mrs. King. So he was he was a typecast kind of a chief character. And I love the way he says, you got to catch the rest of these jewelry store fuckers. The way he says fuckers. It's like he's pursing his mouth because he's so upset. And he's like, fuckers. So yeah, what do you guys think about that guy?
Well, I mean, he's in every police movie, isn't he?
Yeah, he is. Very, very much so. Like to the point where, yeah, I was almost like, oh god, no, not this again.
Yep, it's that scene.
Yeah. Well, I feel like in the movie The Last Action Hero with Arnold Schwarzenegger, they parody the angry police captain, and it's to the point where he's got like smoke coming out of his ears, and he doesn't even make sense. He's just like rambling. He's like, I got it. So it's basically that. Bullet point number 2: people wearing jackets in hot and sunny weather.
You feeling comfortable there, Matt?
Well, I've got my AC cranked down to like 65, but if I walked outside in this right now, I would. And this is essentially what Roger is wearing through most of this movie. They're in Los Angeles, and it's pretty hot in Los Angeles. And Doug is wearing a leather jacket, or at least a leather derivative jacket. Everybody's wearing jackets in this movie, and it's like, I don't understand it. I don't. It happens in a lot of movies, and I get it. Jackets hide a lot. They hide mics. They hide physiques and things like that. But it really, it's bothersome when you see somebody riding in a convertible, sunny weather, leather jacket on.
Yeah, especially one that's cinched at the waist, which horrible.
Yeah.
Last thing you want is elastic in hot weather. Nasty.
Well, his Bigelow's entire wardrobe in this movie is like meathead tough guy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep, and he's got the mullet as well, which just tops it off.
Bullet point number 3 is, I had it written down differently, but I like the way you ordered it, Conrad. The shooting things to solve problems.
Yes.
And they shoot the lock off the mausoleum. He shoots the telephone out of McNabb's hand. Bigelow shoots the head off the reanimated duck that's squawking at him. But the one thing that they don't shoot is what? That would have changed the entire plot.
Yeah, and I was screaming at the movie because when Roger gets locked in the asphyxiation room, Chekhov's asphyxiation room, which is in the tour at the beginning of the lab scene. Doug's got guns lying all over the floor around him, but he does nothing but sort of pat at the door in a futile way. There's a big glass piece of there's a window there. He does nothing about it, and I was just, this is the thing you're not going to shoot at. You've been emptying bullets into everything. They do it in Mr. Thul's place too. They shoot at the lampshade, and that solves that problem. But yeah, his friend's dying, and he doesn't shoot at the glass. Insane.
Yeah.
And he's got, like you said, a variety of weapons to choose from. Bullet point number 4 is the undercover detectives riding around in an ostentatious, expensive, or rare vehicle. They are riding around in a 1960 Chevy Impala convertible that is bright red and has white trim. Can't be more than a couple of those in Los Angeles, and they are undercover today.
Yep. It almost reminds me of my favorite moment in Superman 3, or one of my favorite moments in Superman 3, where Richard Pryor has stolen all of those quarter cents out of the pay system, the salary system. And Napoleon Solo says, whoever has done this, they're going to keep a low profile. They're not going to do anything to show themselves up. And then Pryor pulls up outside in a massive convertible in a cowboy outfit. Yeah. They're not going. They're not flying under the radar here, are they?
Yeah. Nobody. I mean, you could see them coming a mile away. So kind of dumb there. And bullet point number 5, having conversations during gunfights.
Very practical.
That many guns going off at once, your ears would be ringing for days.
Yeah.
Let alone having a conversation when they're in Randy James's apartment and the guys are shooting at him in a confined space like that. I mean, those gunshots are like they're like your head's in a coffee can. I mean, it's deafening. And the fact that people are like throwing out quips and like, oh, remember the good old days when guns killed people? Yeah. No, all you can hear at that point is wow, 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 wow. Yeah. So
yeah, I think one of the best movies to get across that experience was Dunkirk, because Christopher Nolan is very good with his soundtracks, sometimes to the point where people have complained about them being too loud and not being able to hear the dialogue. But there is a sequence in that where characters are inside the shell of a boat, and they're being shot at, and it's a metallic object that's being machine gunned, and those bullet impacts are bordering on painful. So you really get the feeling that you're in there with them in a theater with a good surround system. So yeah, there weren't any quips in that scene.
Yeah, there wouldn't be.
No.
There would just be screams and guys like trying to make their ears pop.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's all for bullet points.
Brilliant.
I'd just like to add a cliche of horror movies. To that, I know it's not action, but the bathroom mirror jump scare was like, I saw that coming a mile away, and it still happened, and I was like, oh, there it is.
Yep.
It's inelegant too because there is a cut in it.
Yeah.
Right. If you're going to do your horror movie bathroom scare, at least have it be seamlessly in one take. But no, there is a cut. So
yeah, that's a cheeseball scene to me, and like every time I see it, I'm like, like there it is. Okay.
Yeah, it's got to be in there. Okay, favorite special effect?
I mean, yes, the Chinatown restaurant scene. Yes, of course. Yep, blows everything out of the water. I did like the Randy melting scene. I mean, it made no sense, but it looked amazing. The fact that there were no cuts, almost like you see her hand in one shot, like decompose, and then her arm falls off. Amazing.
Yeah, that shocked me. I was not expecting it to fall off.
All in one take, like all on camera. There's no like cut away, cut back, cut away. I mean, there were a few, but not as many as you would normally see in a movie like this.
My favorite is after the hand, the second thing that happens is her face kind of melts. And I have a quote from Steve Johnson on that. He said, "One of my favorite effects in the movie is where Lindsay Frost deteriorates. For the first shot where her face starts to sag, all I did was glue some very, very thin but strong fabric to her face at several points and attach very thin fishing line to it and then pull her face down. And it just looked incredible. If you built a dummy, it would have cost $30,000 and wouldn't have looked half as good." And here it was, basically for free in 10 minutes. And yeah, I thought it was shocking. Having read that article from Steve Johnson talking about it, when I watched the movie again, I can see the fishing line.
Oh, really?
And it's probably really apparent on the 4K version, Matt.
Yeah, you can see it, but it's such an effective scene. And even with the the line showing, so to speak, it still holds up, and it's still a very unnerving scene to see someone kind of the only part of that, I love 85% of that scene. The very end is I feel like where it's so cheesy, and where they animate it and then it just like disappears and "I'm sorry, Roger," and I feel like that's where everybody checks out of this movie, where they're like, okay, this is just fucking dumb. I feel like had they just had her head fall off and roll and then cut, so Roger being like 100% more impactful, and then it's not as campy.
Yeah.
But and
yeah,
her whole apology there, it's like, really? You're sorry, Roger? Like, that's what? You're not sorry? You're part of this whole fucking thing.
Yeah.
yep, that's true.
Yeah.
Okay, funniest scene. I've already said my funniest scene, which is the liver attacking Roger in Chinatown. Did anybody have anything that made them laugh more than that?
Oof.
I don't know. For me, the whole movie was hilarious. Like there was just funny scene after funny scene, and scenes that were just like, what was the thinking here? Like the fish tank in Rebecca's office that's got no fish in it. It's an empty fish tank with just pictures of fish. What was the point of that?
I mean, if I wanted to get transcendental, I mean, I guess you could make a connection where it's like, oh, look, they're not real, they're not really alive, but they're just as pretty, because fish die. Because there is a theme with that too, where Randy's fish die, and I guess there's a connection there. I don't. I'm not giving Terry Black that much credit. Like,
there are a lot of fish tanks in this movie for some reason. Like Doug has found a fish tank as well. I don't know. They just had an excess of fish tank props that they had to use, maybe. I don't know.
Maybe
fish
it's
tanks
one
were
of the
cheap, you know.
one of the movie's sponsors, maybe.
Maybe.
Sponsored by Nutrimin.
It's the final scene where Doug has been resurrected and McNabb has ordered him to like kill Roger. So it's like, kill this guy, would you? And then Roger manages to bring Doug back, and he's like come to his senses. And then Doug just says, Roger, he says I should hurt you, but I'm gonna hurt him. And he just throws and then Roger says, kill this guy, would you?
Well, I love that scene too, where in that exact same scene, in that moment when Vincent Price is like cowering in the corner, and he's like, kill him! Why can't you kill him? And knowing what we know now, that he wasn't getting paid for that, I feel like that's just him watching the scene being like, kill him!
Yeah. I'm fairly certain they just pointed a camera in Vincent's direction, just said, just riff, just say things, and we'll just use anything. Yeah.
Well, it also makes you wonder too. It's like, wait a minute, Mr. Loudermilk, like you were just selling the whole concept of immortality to these poor people that are now dead, littering, the laboratory. What do you mean? Why can't you kill him? Like, you know damn well why you can't.
Yeah.
So yeah, it doesn't make any sense, but it's funny.
Okay, everyone, it's final verdict time. Should 1988's Dead Heat be freed, given sulfur thiazole, and be resurrected for the world to marvel at? Or should it be shot 100 times, electrocuted, asphyxiated, and finally dropped back into the oubliette to be lost forever? So Matt, our guest today, has presented us with Dead Heat. What would your final verdict for this movie? Should people watch it?
Without a doubt, absolutely yes. Not only that, this movie should be freed from the oubliette. It should be taken to the top of the castle, and a giant banner should be displayed telling all the people in the land, go watch this movie if you have not yet, because it succeeds where so many movies would fail at combining horror, comedy, and action. Which that's a huge feat, but it's just a peaks and valleys tonally throughout this entire movie, and almost any other movie that would have the strange tonal shifts, it would just fall apart, and it, like Randy James in her bathroom, but it just works, and it's just such a fun ride. It's almost like if Hammer Films was making a campy horror comedy action movie in 1988, is kind of what it's always felt like to me. It's got that kind of pedigree, even though it has no connection to Hammer Films. but it's very inventive and it's unique, and it's really intrinsic to its time too.
Yeah.
So yeah, I love it. I love this film.
Yeah. Well, I'd never seen this movie. I'd never heard of this movie. But it is one of those kind of what if movies. Like, what if we take buddy cop movies and zombie movies and just put them together? Let's see what would result in that. And I think it kind of works. Like, yeah, it's a bit B grade. Some of the acting's not great. Some of the production aspects aren't great. But the effects are outstanding. Like, I was shocked at how good some of the effects scenes were. Just floored by how good they look. And yeah, it's not great for like female characters. They don't have a lot to do, and they're just killed off unceremoniously.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think the key word for this movie for me was fun. It's just a lot of fun, and you can tell that they're having fun, and they're not trying too hard to make a good movie. And it's just a nice thrill ride. Just enjoy it. Enjoy the craziness.
Yeah. I think reluctantly, I would have to agree. I'm still not convinced the story holds together at all. I can't follow it in any case. The acting is it's hit and miss. I've seen reviews where a lot of criticism goes to Joe Piscopo on this. But I think it's a mixed bag, and some of it's to do with the writing. Let's be honest, actors are only as good as the writing they're given, and I think half of Doug's jokes fall flat, or they're sort of questionable in terms of their taste, and the other half are actually pretty funny, and the really cheesy ones are really cheesy but funny. The special effects really are incredible, and I think mainly the thing just barrels along like a ridiculous wild carnival ride. And if you're a fan of the 80s and practical effects and buddy cop movies and want to see this weird mashup of Miami Vice and Shaun of the Dead that you've never heard of before and had no idea existed, you're in for a real treat. Because, I had a blast with it, and it's been really great to talk to you about it, Matt. So thanks for bringing it to us.
Oh, absolutely. I knew this one would be a great one just because it's such a crossover of ideas, and that's what Iconicon is all about, and us kind of commingling our podcast. And I love the Shaun of the Dead, Miami Vice conglomeration that you just said. To me, it's that, but it's also RoboCop meets Night of the Living Dead meets like a detective noir. So it's so many flavors that create this organic stew, and it should be disgusting, but it works, and it's tasty, and it's I love it. So
okay, well, with that in mind, let's set that sucker free.